In this video, I'm just going to be showing you the basics of Claude code. So a couple things to note right here. This is where all of your chats will be stored. If you have multiple folders that you're working on, so different projects that you'd be working in, different chats will be stored in those different projects. You also have your routines right here. These are essentially scheduled tasks that run on your computer, and you can schedule these for however often, however little you want them to run. You also have these blue dots that show up whenever a chat is finished loading and it's ready for you to review. You also have these yellow dots right here that tell you that it needs your permission for something, and so you need to come in here and approve it. Down here in settings is where you will be able to connect more, essentially, abilities to Claude. So right now these are all the different MCPs that my Claude has access to, and essentially this means that it can go in and perform functions and perform activities on these specific types of softwares. The big thing that I really like is the Claude in Chrome. This one allows it to go and use Chrome exactly like you would, and so that really gives it access to use a lot of apps like you would without even having to have an MCP configured. But this also allows it to pull data from a lot of these platforms super easily. You've also got your settings right here that allow you to control a variety of different things. The big thing is making sure these are toggled on, so that way you can allow Claude code to run in the background for you. One thing that's always helpful to be able to check is the usage. This just kind of shows you where you were at in terms of the amount of credits used on your subscription, and so you can kind of essentially use this to know whether or not you're going to be able to afford to keep running as many programs and stuff like that and run as many chats as you are during any specific time frame that it shows up right here. So if you ever get an error that says, hey, you're out of usage, you'll typically see here that somewhere along here it'll say that you've used 100% of your usage. I leave this turned on for myself because I use Claude code a ton, but I would recommend toggling this off so that way if a chat goes just haywire, it doesn't immediately spend a ton of money in credits because it was just cycling through. Down here, you have the ability to control how much freedom Claude has to perform actions for you. I typically like to use it on bypass permissions mode, specifically because our Creekside brain is built exactly for this reason, and it has blockers and code that it get pulled into your computer in order to prevent it from going haywire. And so this essentially allows it as much freedom as you are able to without it being able to do things like delete files on your computer and stuff like that. Auto mode is a little bit safer version of the bypass permissions. I almost never use the ask permissions mode because it will be constantly asking you for permission to do literally anything, and that slows things down a ton. Over here, you have the ability to control essentially how many credits Opus or Claude is using during your chats. And so I like to leave it on extra high typically or max because I want to get the best possible output. But if you're running a bunch of chats simultaneously, or you have a question that doesn't require a whole lot of thinking power from Claude, you can turn the effort down so it doesn't spin through your tokens as much. However, if you're using the Pro version, you shouldn't really have to worry about burning through your tokens that quickly unless you're just using this for hours on end. Then it may make sense to switch the effort. And then here you can control the models that you use or that Claude uses for you. I typically always leave it on the most recent version of Opus with the 1 million context in order to ensure that I'm giving it the best possible ability to give me the best possible output. The biggest cheat code that you can have when working with AI is using this microphone down here to speak whatever you want the AI to do, because one, it is significantly quicker, and two, you will give it so much more context and so much more detail as to what you want it to accomplish that it will be able to output a much better result the first time around rather than you sitting there and typing out exactly what you want it to do. Sometimes typing it out is nice when you're thinking through a more complex idea. Oftentimes I find it's just good to just give it a word vomit of what I'm kind of thinking about trying to do, and it will organize that information into something intelligent. When I'm working on multiple chats at once, you have the ability to drag and pin chats up here, so that way when you're working on specific chats, they stay up here, and then when you're done with them, you can just drag and drop them to unpin them. That helps it to stay organized, especially when you're working on multiple things at once. One thing that I see a lot of people doing when they just want to like ask questions is moving over to the chat feature to just ask Claude questions. And if you need something really quickly, feel free to do that. But code is typically going to be significantly more valuable because it's going to be hooked up, especially in Creekside Marketing's case, it's hooked up to a database that it can essentially give you context-based information. So it won't just give you an answer completely oblivious to your situation. It will have a lot more detailed answer if you use Claude Code and versus using Claude Chat or Claude Cowork. Another very important thing to note is opening a new session for every single different type of task or question that you have for it is extremely important to improve the output that it gives you, because it will essentially start bleeding context between different things that you're talking about. So if you're wanting to essentially craft a message for one client and then you're wanting to build out, say, a Google Ads agent, you'd want to open two different sessions to work on those separately. So that way, one, they can run simultaneously, so you'll get your output quicker, and two, the context stays relevant to the exact thing that you're working on, and it's more likely to give you the best possible output. Hope this video helps, and I will see you in the next one.